It is exciting getting ready for the big 4th of July parade here in beautiful Fredericksburg, Texas. This has become burning with the rebound. Steal.
Welcome to the Fredericksburg Chamber of Commerce.
Please on time here, 3,500. So they go to your dad.
And we hear that promise again in John's Gospel.
We love living in the country.
When I think about
Husband.
Along the fairways at Lady Bird have a way of slowing life down.
Hey there, well, welcome, Billy fans. This is
on September 25th, 1925.
John
when she sank
Crawford Fritch.
Hello.
Hey John, Scott Emmel, SI Wealth Management. We'd love to sit down and discuss financial strategies with you.
At SI Wealth Management, understanding the unique needs of our clients is essential.
Whether beginning savers or long-term estate planners.
SI Wealth Management customized a comprehensive plan just for us.
They created strategies for every phase of life.
For wealth management with customized portfolios, contact SI Wealth Management.
My name is Kevin Hurd, and I'm the operations manager here at Citizens Insurance Agency. We've been in Fredericksburg for over 100 years, and our agents have 30-plus years of experience in protecting our community in uncertain times. The future has always been uncertain. But whether you're starting something new or protecting what you love, we've got you covered. Citizens Insurance Agency, 100 years strong, and we're still here.
whistle? You can't? Everyone, let's go ahead and get started. Can anybody? Thank you. Let's go ahead and get started this morning. Grab some coffee and a donut and have a seat. Wow, what a crowd. I think this might officially be the largest crowd that we've ever had. I say that every time. This event has really grown from literally just about 10 people in a small coffee shop to this, a packed house. There's 72 chairs in here, I was told. I don't see too many that are open. So first and foremost, I want to thank Paige Finley and Fbg.Live. This is being live streamed right now. You'll be able to watch it on YouTube if you'd like to see yourself. If you don't want to be on that, you can either turn your back to it, or we have two entrances right here, or exits, that you can escape right now. I'll give you just a minute. So thanks again for being here with, I'm going to call it Coffee with the City and the County. And we've kind of switched a little bit. Our good friend, Commissioner Dennis Neffendorf, has joined us. So if you live in the county and you have a question, or if you live in the city and you have a county question, Dennis is here to answer those. He's been a big help in doing that the last couple of times, so thank you, Dennis. This is the hardest part of the entire session, is going around the room and recognizing the folks that are here. Although I know them very well, it's hard to remember the names sometimes just right off the bat. But of course, Commissioner Neffendorf is here. We have a couple of current council members. Bobby Watson right here. We have our newest council member, Randy Briley, with us. We have former council member Tom Musselman, Tim Dooley, former council member Tony Klein is with us today. So Sharon Joseph, former council member. We've got a quorum, and this was noticed as a quorum of the council. So this is a completely legal meeting. Just going around staff-wise, we have Andrea Schmidt, our Parks and Rec Director. We have Shelley Goodwin, our City Secretary. Let's see, going around, Anna Hudson, our Development Services Director, recently promoted to Development Services Director. Brady Clausen, CVB Director, is with us today. Thanks for being here, Brady. Garrett Bond, our Assistant City Manager. We have Reagan Rapke, our Fire Marshal. We have our Police Chief, Brian Vorauer, with us. David Young is with us. Who am I forgetting? Justin Calhoun, Emergency Management Coordinator. Chris Canese, our Director of Public Works and Utilities. Am I missing anyone? Missing? Oh, Lynn Bizzle. The hardest part of the job. Right here. Lynn Bizzle, hang on a second. Lynn Bizzle, our fire chief, is with us. Sorry, Lynn, I couldn't see you standing there in the wide open. Leslie Embry, administrative assistant. Rebecca Goff, sorry, again. So thank you staff for being here. Obviously, staff is very interested in engaging in this discussion and helping answering questions too. So let's go ahead and jump right in. Have a number of items I'd like to cover. We're getting into the budget season now. Our budget season is generally from about mid-May through mid-September. I think this year the budget calendar, we're going to adopt the budget September 19th. It's a very lengthy, involved process. We've already started the process. On May 25th, we had a strategic planning work session with the City Council, an almost 7-hour-long discussion with the City Council on community priorities. I would say probably one of, if not the best, work session that we've had with the City Council here in Fredericksburg in the last decade. Very good discussion, a lot of priorities rose to the top. We go through this exercise, we've been going through this exercise, a semblance of it every year, I started out reminding the council of the priorities that they set last year. I was happy to report that we have completed probably 98% of those. A lot of those had to do with staff. A lot of those had to do with budget. We completed a lot last year. And we did a refresh on those priorities. So just to give you an idea of what the council's interested in, concentrating on going into the budget this year. Coming from Emily Kirchner, promoting health and wellness of the community through the outdoors, parks, sports fields, walking trails, etc. And listen for the common themes here. She also has continued prioritization of infrastructure, water, wastewater, transportation, sanitation, etc. I'll touch on that a little bit more here in just a minute. Strategic plan for city-owned properties. We own a lot of property around town. We don't have plans for all of those properties currently. Improved mobility and connectivity. Anybody have trouble getting down Main Street? Working on that. And finally, the eclipse. Councilmember Klein, law enforcement. First, transportation traffic issues. Next, enforcement of STR ordinance and other violations. Development and contractor communications, the city working better with contractors through the development process. Councilmember Briley's priorities, police, fire, EMS. You heard that in his campaign. He's very interested in making sure that they have everything they need to operate, including staff. Family-based programs, including child care and parks. Public and tourism, transportation and parking, again. Leverage of hot tax, and I might ask Randy to talk about that here in just a little bit. Finally, Bobby Watson, Councilmember Watson, water, managing that resource, parks, improve existing parks, build new parks. Short-term rentals, revise ordinance. Affordable housing, we'll talk about that just a little bit more. Future city needs, including the landfill, city hall, police station, fire station, water reclamation facility, etc. Quality of life for our residents, taking care of residents before visitors. Managing the tourism industry, working with CVB more closely. And then concentrating on future employee needs. And then finally, Mayor Hoover, concentrating first and foremost on community or neighborhoods. Community engagement and communication, much like we're doing right here. Children and child care, again, something that just about the entire council is interested in pursuing. And then finally, city-county collaboration. So you can see a lot of those community priorities that the council is very interested in going into the budget process this year. After we did the strategic planning session, we presented what we call our capital improvements plan. Last council meeting on June 6th. It is a 20-year snapshot look into all of the city's infrastructure needs, equipment needs, etc., with a current value dollar amount for that 20-year plan of about $350 million. So we provide a lot of detail on what will be proposed this year, this next year, in that capital improvement plan. And I can tell you one of the major things that we have plugged in are new tennis courts and new pickleball courts. So on the parks side, as we talk about making parks improvements, we really have a pretty clean slate out here. We have the need for not only updated but additional tennis courts. Pickleball is a sport that is growing nationwide. We had individuals speak at that council meeting when we presented the CIP on the need for tennis courts and pickleball courts. We had planned 6 pickleball courts. When we asked the group that was there, the spokesperson for the group said that they could probably use 16. So they have grown their membership pretty substantially. I think they're up to a little bit over 100 members now, and that's growing. They invite everyone out to play the sport. So if you're interested, and you may already do that, raise of hands who plays pickleball. Okay, see, young, old, it doesn't matter. It's a lower impact sport, I think, than tennis. Again, it's a really good group out there. Also included in the capital improvements plan for future projects, and I mentioned some of these, are a new city hall. I say this every time. We really needed a new city hall about 5 years ago. If we started construction today, it'd probably be 3 years before we could actually occupy that building. We're out of space. We have filled up every broom closet up in City Hall. We have satellite offices currently, have our Parks Department, IT, Health Department out of City Hall. We're trying to get everybody back together in a new City Hall potentially. We need a new fire station. There are a lot of calls, especially out east of town along the 290 East Corridor. Commissioner Neffendorf is very well aware of this. Wanted to let everyone know that just had a meeting with Judge Jones yesterday, Garrett Bond and I, and we talked about trying to share a lot of that response information more closely with the county so that they understand what our responses are to and kind of what the volume of calls are, how those increase on the weekends and so forth, and really the need for a fire station probably somewhere east of town. We're also in need of a new police station, municipal court. I don't know that we could fit all of our police officers in the current law enforcement center, even if we were fully staffed. So we did a conceptual design for a new police station a couple of years ago that included a municipal court, a council meeting space. I think the estimate on that project was about $28 million, give or take. We're also talking about a lot of transportation projects. There are basically 3 tiers of transportation projects, the way we've been talking about it. First, we have safety projects. A lot of the projects that will be constructed along Main Street, as simple as restriping Main Street, doing away with that kind of center no man's land that doesn't really serve as a center turn lane, but allowing us to widen that outside lane so that the large trucks parked on Main aren't as impactful. So projects like that. We have our mid-tier projects. There's 4 of them, range in cost from about $10 to $30 million. On the north side of Main Street, we have the extension of Mulberry across 1631 to Eagle Street by the hardware store, if you can imagine that. Kind of taking the North Core neighborhood there and allowing them to get around to Main Street instead of North Llano, Elk Street, Main Street, and getting over. We have the extension of Frederick Road across 1631, and if you can imagine that, eventually intersecting with Friendship Lane at Main Street, kind of a north partial loop right there. On the south side of Main, we have the extension of South Cherry Street across the creek to Post Oak. So that would get you all the way to 16 South, kind of the secondary Milam Street. Then also on the south, we have the extension of Friendship Lane that would follow Tybee-Dale, Kerr Road, cross 290 West, and eventually intersect with 87 North. And then the upper tier project that we have is the relief route. I know that Garrett Bond has met with TxDOT recently, and that has come back up. This is something that has been discussed in Fredericksburg for at least 60 years, according to the Keller family, who's been involved, I think, 3 different generations now in discussing the effort. So we have a myriad of these transportation projects. So when we're talking about these large projects, these large multi-million-dollar projects, we know that the decisions that we make, the council makes, impact everyone in this room. And they're very serious about that. In fact, I just had a question from Councilmember Briley yesterday about what is the no new revenue tax rate? What does that mean? We have adopted a very low tax rate, in fact, historically. In fact, we're one of the lowest tax rates in the entire state of Texas. I think we're second behind Brenham, maybe, for a city. But our valuations are very high, so the taxes that you pay are a little bit higher. I've said this before also, that the city's portion of your tax bill is only about 12 to 15% of the total. So the majority of it does come from FISD, the county being next, and the city being last for the large entities, taxing entities. So when we talk about these large projects, bond projects, the sports complex is another one, forgot to mention that one. We are in a really good position right now, financially. We have some debt that we're paying off currently. And according to our finance department, we could actually borrow about $10 million right now without any tax implications. So about $10 million, give or take, without increasing the tax rate. So as we're looking at these projects, again, it all has to do with priorities. We're going to have a lot of discussions with the council and budget workshops coming up. I'm not sure that any of these projects are going to rise to the top, but as we're talking about taxes, as we're talking about potential tax increases, we're also talking about how we can reasonably maybe put a little bit more of that burden on our visitors. And again, I'm going to ask Randy to talk about, in just a little bit, talk about some of his ideas to do that. We're always looking for ways to cover our cost, for instance, for special events on market plots. I don't know what that looks like, maybe a special per head fee for gated events, something like that. That would cover our probably between $100,000 and $200,000 a year direct cost impact for overtime and so forth, for all that it takes to manage those special events on the square. So things like that. We're also looking at ways to help pay for fire EMS services, maybe through some kind of special visitor tax. Our fire EMS department, our police department are larger than they have to be because of the large number of visitors that we have on the weekends. A lot of pros and cons there. We'd have potholes all in our streets probably, and half the staff that we do, and the quality of life would be much less than it is in Fredericksburg if we did not have the visitors that we have. So it's a balancing act there. But again, looking at ways to reasonably place a little bit of that burden on the folks that visit here to provide a little bit of relief to you. One of the items that continues to be included on council agendas is discussion of affordable housing. There has been a lot of discussion about creating a housing authority in Fredericksburg. I know that a number of council members have researched that, discussed that. It doesn't seem like there is as much momentum to get that established right now. There are a lot of other solutions out there to the overall problem, including the apartments that are being constructed right now. When we talk about affordable housing, I don't know that you can build a single family residential home in Fredericksburg that's affordable to first home buyers, for instance. We talk about this all the time. The police officer married to, a teacher, first time home buyer that's trying to work and live here in Fredericksburg. It's almost impossible to do that. We have a lot of people commuting in. But it will be interesting to see over the next couple of years. It appears that we are almost going to double our apartment stock, the number of rooms, units available. We have about 525 currently, is that correct, Anna? And we have about 500 or so under construction currently, and about 300 more that are approved for construction. So when you see the apartments being constructed on Friendship Lane, which, by the way, my daughter just got home from college and she drove down Friendship Lane at night and she thought she was lost. I mean, it does look kind of out of the way, or kind of out of place if you're not used to seeing that. It's quite going to change the way that area looks quite a bit, along with the middle school. But we'll see who occupies those. I think I mentioned this last time, that Port A had a similar project that they built for those commuting in to Port Aransas, service industry workers from Corpus and other places. And once those were constructed and available, people from all over the United States were moving into them. And they didn't really address the issue. So we can't, just build something for a specific group of people. So we're going to keep an eye on that. I know Brady's keeping a very close eye on folks that visit Fredericksburg, kind of the habits of the local people using cell phone data and so forth to track movements, restaurants, visitation, things like that. So it'll be interesting to see who fills those up. I heard something very interesting the other day in a group discussion with a Hill Country Alliance leadership group I'm involved with. There was actually a commissioner from Hayes County speaking about the Hill Country in general. He said, what usually brings people to a city or a place is their job. They move somewhere because they got a job in Austin or whatever the case may be. But that's not as much the case with the Hill Country. In the state of Texas, when we talk about population growth and over the next 50 years growing by 80%, a lot of that coming in the next 20 years, people want to be in the Texas Hill Country. They want to retire here. They want to be here. They might move here and then create a job for themselves. They're not moving here for the position. They're moving here because they could live anywhere probably, but this is where they choose. So that in itself creates even more pressure on the housing situation here. So it's going to be something we continue to talk about, and I would be more than happy to get input from any of the council that wants to speak on this when I wrap up here. I wanted to remind everyone about the series of town hall meetings that we're having. Those have been very successful. We just had number 7 of 27 that we have scheduled. We're trying to do those twice a month. Look for your invitation in the mail. It's basically bringing this meeting, taking this meeting, copy with the city manager and really the majority of the council members to your doorstep. So if you don't want to show up here or your neighbors don't want to show up here, you can stand with them in your driveway with just about the entire council. Police chief is always there. Ask questions related to your neighborhood, community related questions, anything's on the table. Those have been very successful, very relaxed. We've had very good turnout. Okay, well what I typically do is go around the room, and one of the questions that I asked last time, the last town hall meeting, was speaking of moving to Fredericksburg, what you love most about Fredericksburg. I'm interested to know that a lot of you took the community survey. Is there something that we don't have that you would like to see, whether it's parks related, maybe a transportation project, you'd like a little bit of relief here or there? I would really like to know that too. Before I do that, I want to give the council the opportunity, if you would. Randy, talk just a little bit about some of your ideas for maybe a tourist tax. The rest of the council, affordable housing, if there's anything you want to add to that.
Thank you. All right, well, I'll just walk up since you all are pointing this way, so save your chiropractor some time. A couple things. I guess I'll start with the hot tax. I own an STR, to be honest. I always say that. It's a small cabin, but that I do own one. So I've been generating hot taxes for 7 or 8 years that I've been here. And I've always attended the sessions, and I always watched the individuals and the organizations approach. And there's some amazing organizations and historic assets that we have in this town. And my heart says to save the assets and preserve those assets for future generations. And I said that on council the other day. That doesn't mean that we can't support community activities and things of that nature. But what I noticed sitting on council this past time, we have a fixed budget of about $500,000 annually. And I'm looking to you to correct me if I'm wrong. It's $500K. And when I did the math on the asks, we were about $800,000 and change, well over. Mm-hmm. And of that, $423,000 were advertising. And advertising to me is kind of a flash in the pan. You advertise and it's gone. It's not a tangible asset. And so I really look to Brady. Brady's a marketing expert. If you haven't met this gentleman, he's an amazing guy. I really think that if we leverage his expertise under the umbrella of marketing for the disparate organizations, whether it's a dance or a fish fry or whatever, that Brady can help consolidate and more effectively use those dollars to spend and subsequently save some of those hot taxes for the betterment of the community. I really also see we have to spend those dollars. We have to do a couple of different things. One is we have to be marketing our town, right? Outbound marketing outside of the city proper, and we have to be putting heads in beds. And there's a couple of other criteria. But I would like to figure out and sit down with Brady and perhaps in the next 30 to 60 days, how do we reformulate the HOT approach? And how do we use that to leverage potentially building out assets that are for our community as well? Tourists can use them, so we check all the legal boxes of HOT spend, but how can we help improve our community over time with those dollars being spent? So that's kind of my philosophy, number one. Switching gears away from HOT taxes now, I called the city of Arlington when I was running for office, and I talked about Dallas Cowboy Stadium, and I said, how do you guys help pay for Dallas Cowboy Stadium? That's how they got it out of the Dallas city and down into Arlington. And they said, well, under the state law, there is a stadium provision that we can actually leverage. So if you fly into Arlington, rent a car, there's a tax on that, rental car, excuse me. And there's also a tax on your hotel. We don't have many STRs, but we have a few. So we leverage a percentage of tax. I don't remember if it was 2% or 3%, but all of that is earmarked for Jerry's house. So it all goes to the to the Cowboy Stadium. So I really looked at Fredericksburg. We don't have a stadium. I can't leverage that because it's not legal. I've been coached by our city attorney, and he sent me the tax, which is like the size of a Sears and Roebuck catalog. So I'm patiently going through that. But I'd like to find an area that I can leverage. So what I did is I took an informal room count of the city of Fredericksburg, including hotels, STRs, and I factored the number of nights stayed and did some of my fuzzy math. And at 2% on top of a nightly stay, based on an annual basis, we can generate somewhere between $500,000 to $650,000, depending how busy we are and what's going on. And that's something that would be generated reoccurring annually every single year. So I look at tourists not as a liability, but as an asset, and how can we leverage that asset? And my personal draw there is, and I can't speak for other council members here, but my personal approach would be to take those dollars and earmark those for police, fire, and EMS to make sure we can pay these folks, keep these folks. I have some ideas around housing I won't go into now, but to me it would be if, Chief Bizzles told me that on a Monday he gets 500 calls. Some of those are phone calls, some of those are outbound dispatches. On a Saturday he's up to 700. And that is tourism. So let's be honest here for a second. So if it's taxing our city services, I think it's only fair we should look at tourism as an asset. How can we raise some money to help to offset that cost and make sure our first responders are taken care of? So, yes, sir.
Question for you on the hot tax. So who pays the hot tax? Is it a city tax? Is it a county tax? Are RV parks included? Are these tents and groups that are going up? Is everywhere where there's a bed, is somebody paying hot tax?
Well, that's a great question. I know Tom's here. Tom's probably more of an expert in that area. As it relates to hospitality, hotels, short-term rentals, you pay a state tax, which is 6%, and 7% is paid to the city. So, Tom, do you have any more comments?
And the county also collects hot.
Yeah. So what the county does, the same type of thing. So if you think about the county as a city by itself, it should be collecting that hot tax in the county as well. The city itself does a pretty good job because we know who's out there advertising, and subsequently we can say, X number 725 STRs are operating. This is how many should be remitting taxes. And I know for a fact, I've sat with city staff, they're really good at finding those ones that aren't doing it.
The RV spots though?
I can't address RVs. I haven't really gone after that personally. I don't, Clinton, if you have any thoughts?
No, they're not. We generate about, inside the city limits, about 6.8 million in hot per year. We give 5/7 of that. We don't give 5/7 of that. We fund the CVB budget, Convention and Visitors Bureau budget, about 5.6 million. Is that about?
5.3 this year.
5.3 5.3, so that 5/7 of that, we give a lot of it away to nonprofits and so forth. We're trying to figure out ways to utilize those dollars in other ways in the community, again, as a tax relief effort. By the way, 1 penny on the tax rate, a lot of times at the end of the year we're talking about fractions of a penny, generates $275,000 in ad valorem taxes, again inside the city limits. Just to give you an idea, so what Randy's talking about is essentially about 2 pennies on the tax rate.
But I agree with Randy on the way he's thinking, but I think somehow, some way, every head that's in a bed should be paying a tax, whether they're in a tent or whether they're in an RV or whatever they're in, because they're coming to town because of the events that are here in town. And so that's what you want, and then let the CBD be the advertising for all of the events. That would save a lot of money.
And I don't know if the law allows the hot tax to be charged for that type of stay. Again, Brady might know just a little bit more, about the specifics, but.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's a state legislative directive. So,
right.
Hotels, motels, short-term rentals fall into that category.
Yeah. You might want to. Can you take that over to him?
Currently meet that legislative targets. Doesn't mean we can't take that up at the next session, but as of right now, those are not taxable.
So I would think that if you look at Fredericksburg, RV parks that are being built intentionally for this, there ought to be a way, you got to rename them from an RV park to a destination with portability or something like that. There ought to be a way to go, and maybe it has to be worked at the state level, but that opportunity is something that should be looked at, because of what I can see, RV solutions are growing faster than STRs. A lot of it is growing out in the county, right? So there's a different perspective. But if you look at, I get, as a resident, I get more mailings why I should buy an RV spot or a tiny home. And so I think that from a tax base, we ought to be finding out what can be used to help it pay its share of the people who are coming and using resources.
Good point. I'm kind of the moving microphone, so that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I didn't recognize the fuzzy hair.
Yeah. So we do have a microphone as we go around the room. If you could use the mic so we can pick up that audio. Bobby, anything to add on the affordable housing side or otherwise?
First, I'd just like to thank everybody for being here today. It's great to see people show up and want to get involved. Also in the town halls, if you have one coming to your area, please go to it. It's a great event. It's more relaxed. Bring your lawn chairs and sit around and talk with your neighbors. On the housing, I've been interested in housing. It's a big deal. It's a big animal to try to tame, but I just want to get everything on the table so that we can truly evaluate if we can do anything here. We have a big problem. We have the need for a lot of workers, not only hospitality, but police and fire, school teachers, people working on Main Street. We just don't have enough workers in any industry right now. And part of the problem is they can't afford to live here. And if we could figure out some way to assist in that way, I think it would be great for the community. How it turns out, I have no idea. Housing Authority is one. There's working with developers, hasn't worked out yet, but we will continue to do that. I think the apartments that are coming online right now will have a big effect on housing, but those apartments are also more expensive. Cost of land, cost of construction have continued to rise. So it's something we will continue to look at, and we don't have the answers yet, but we're certainly continuing to talk about it and discussing it. So, and again, thank y'all for being here. But one thing I do want to mention if you've gone to the farmer's market or gone to some other events, please take note of all the young families that live here now. It is truly amazing to see younger families moving here. They're figuring out a way to make a living, how to live here. More kids in school, more kids in church. It means that Fredericksburg is alive and growing and will continue to grow as long as the young people move here. I was talking to somebody the other day who I thought was young. He's mid-40s. And he was telling me about all the young people that are moving here and how they're looking to him as a mentor. And I'm going, you are young. He said, no, I'm old by their standards. So it's really exciting to see that. And we need to take a look at what services we need to provide to those young families. And I know parks is a big deal for me. So you'll be seeing more about that. So thank you very much for being here.
Thanks, Bobby. Tony, anything to add? Okay. So I'm going to start back here in this side of the room, going around. And again, if you could just introduce yourself, let us know if you live in the city or the county. Tell us what you love most about Fredericksburg, anything you'd like to see that we don't currently have, and then any other questions or comments you might have.
I'm Tom Musselman. I've been a former city councilman and currently on the Planning and Zoning Commission. I live on Friendship Speedway, and one of two single-family houses still left on Friendship Speedway. I think at these meetings we talk about water a lot, okay, and everybody's concerned about water, and rightfully so. But I think that there are other things that we need to be looking at as a city, and the things that I've come up with the heightened building activity that we've had in the community recently, especially in the post-COVID years. We've been talking about our landfill. We're in our last cell. What's the plan after that? Is it transfer station? How does a transfer station work? How does that impact the city of Fredericksburg? How does that impact Gillespie County? I think these are things that the council and also city staff are going to have to address, and they're going to have to inform the public about that. The second thing, looking at development, I know that Clinton has talked about having a development. A development map that shows where all the development is, and if it's in the county, it's in the city, which I think would be good. I'm thinking of right now, with all the development going on, what about electric infrastructure? Okay, to me, it looks like most of the development that's going on in the city, a predominant majority of that is happening in the CTEC service area as opposed to the city of Fredericksburg service area. And I'm sure that there are a lot of people that don't understand that the city is limited in its growth and what it can provide. Do we have enough? Does CTEC have enough infrastructure to provide this new growth? The third thing, and it ties into water, is with our sewage treatment plant. And how close are we to needing to build a new plant or upgrading the existing plant, and how much is that hickey going to cost? So I think these are things that the council is going to have to address. These are tax issues. When you're talking about treatment plants, you're talking about big bond issues, and I think that's what's in the future for our community.
I'm going to walk this over to Chris and Garrett to help answer a few of these questions. But regarding the landfill, Garrett, how many years of life do we have remaining in the landfill?
So based on our most recent annual report, which we have to submit to TCEQ, we have about 12 and a half years of life in our landfill.
Is that with all the building material?
So unfortunately, what we've been seeing is because of the increased tonnage coming in, we lose about 2 years of life each year. So what we anticipate is next year in our report, we'll say 10 and a half years. So in terms of landfill, we'd like that number to be at 50 or 100 years. In terms of a life of a landfill, you think long term. So we are completing a new cell out there. I don't know if y'all have seen it, but there's a new hole. That is cell 9. We have 13 cells in our overall plan. So we still have 4 cells that could potentially be built. But knowing, you know, we've only got 10 to 12 years of life, we've been working on a feasibility study with our landfill consultant. We should have that completed report in the next couple weeks, and then we plan to talk to the city council about possible options. So a lot more to come on that, but we are also looking at the current rates. We are one of the cheapest landfills in the area, so what we're starting to see is a lot of these larger construction projects are starting to haul in material to the landfill. So one way to address that is to adjust the rates accordingly.
And to check where the crap's coming from.
Yeah, and that's difficult. You know, we have a lot of people that claim it's coming from Gillespie County. We can't follow where these trucks are coming from. Right now, the landfill is intended for city and county residents, but we can't restrict outside waste from coming in. That's the rules of the state.
Is that a state law?
That's under our current permit. As long as it's permitted waste, we have to accept it. So again, we need to look at our rates. With our rates being so low, even with the cost of fuel, apparently it's still cheaper for them to haul it in. So that's one thing we're definitely looking at.
And we're not suggesting raising rates for the average homeowner here in Fredericksburg. It's the tipping fees for waste that comes across the scales from either inside or outside the city limits. But a little bit more on the landfill, you know, I've mentioned this before also. I feel like landfills are a liability. I've lived in a community that had a leaking landfill. We're 100% groundwater supply here. If we ever had that situation here, it could jeopardize our water supply. So we're talking about a transfer station, collecting that waste here, shipping it out to a facility in another location, potentially a waste to energy conversion. If one of those is developed regionally, which there's a lot of discussion about that all across the state, but just limiting the footprint of that landfill, not expanding that liability into the future. Landfills, once they're full, once they're closed, that material takes about 30 to 40 years to completely break down. A lot of monitoring, groundwater, air, and so forth. That goes on. A lot of potential long-term for contamination of the groundwater. So we really want to try to limit that. And that's really the conversation we'll be having with the council, starting this year.
So in regards to the electric service area, as Tom mentioned, the service territory between Central Texas and the city was defined in 1975. Those limits are set, they're set by the Public Utility Commission. There's no changing those boundaries. You're correct, most of the growth, and as the city limits does move, those are Central Texas served areas. We do have some infill lots and so forth that does increase our electric load, but it's minimal compared to what Central Texas is seeing. With that being said, we do, through the development process, work with Central Texas Electric Co-op on those service areas. We don't necessarily see their load analysis, but just letting them know and that developers working with Central Texas at that same time. If it's a city-developed project, then obviously we're working directly with the electric department with our service providers, which are AEP and LCRA. As we do see some additional growth within the city's electric service territory, we have a consultant that does a load analysis for us annually, and we do look at those areas from a very broad planning perspective, many years out, because electric infrastructure, like any infrastructure, takes time to plan, develop, construct, and so forth. So we do look at that annually, Tom. From the wastewater treatment plant standpoint, this is something that we have looked at from a capacity standpoint at our current treatment facility. We are in really good shape. With that being said, we have seen some additional flows coming in. I wouldn't say it's not compounded like we see on the water side with development, because again, a lot of that watering that we're seeing, particularly this time of year, is going on to landscaping or lawns and not going into the collection system. However, I will say that the treatment plant is not a current treatment technology. It works just fine. It treats what we need to treat, meets all the state requirements. But at some point, we will look to relocate the current facility and upgrade the technology from a treatment standpoint. So the current treatment plant is doing a great job. It's doing what it needs to do, meeting all the state requirements. But I think because of the location of the treatment facility and kind of the growth around that, it does make sense, and we'll visit with council and look at that, about relocating that maybe to another city-owned facility, city-owned property, I should say. As far as a cost, I would say in today's dollars, we're looking at about $80 million to build a new plant. So it's a very, very large project, a high dollar project. Again, the water department is a enterprise fund based on the revenues generated from water and wastewater sales. So it doesn't hit the property tax or sales tax side of things in the general fund. But it is a very large project amongst a lot of large projects that we have in the water wastewater department. So, any other questions or comments on that? Answer your question?
All right, Mr. Dooley.
Good morning. My name is Tim Dooley. I am a former member of the City Council, and I am currently a member of the Planning and Zoning Commission. My biggest issue at this point in time is I am really worried from a planning and zoning standpoint that we are getting overbuilt in our community. Every meeting that planning and zoning has, we have another project that's coming on board. They're asking permission to continue to develop the community. So what happens is that they come through the process and they become approved, and then time goes on and they get put on a shelf because it takes time to get projects online. But as they continue to come to us on the Planning and Zoning Commission, we tend to forget what's on the shelf. And I'm afraid we're just getting overbuilt. It's that simple. You take a look at what's going on beyond the city limits out on 290 in Mr. Neffendorf's precinct. And I just saw something on, I got a post just this week about another big facility that's going in on 290 right on the other side of the Pedernales River Bridge. That's another complete community in and of itself. So I am concerned for that. I think we need to try to catch up before we continue to snowball, because I think that's where we are.
Good morning. I don't know a lot of faces here, but I know a handful, Dennis included here. My name's Stuart Gibson. I live out in the county. My wife and I have lived here for about 10 years now, so we're outsiders or Ostlanders, whatever you want to call it. I'm originally from Scotland, lived in Texas for 20 years, and you know, I think what I like most about Fredericksburg, to get to the first part of the question, is well, sitting right here, it's the people. It's just good, decent, honest, down-to-earth people, and we've met an awful lot of them, and that's, you know, we love living here because of the people. In terms of issues, I mean, look, we're loving every minute of being here. I agree with Mr. Dooley's comments about the growth and keeping ahead of it, but you know, with the people that are here, getting their heads together, I'm sure we will keep ahead of it. It's just figuring out what that plan will be.
Thank you. Thanks for being here.
Gary Saucier, I live in the county, I'm just here to listen.
Thanks, Gary.
Well, I got a couple of items here. You know, we're talking about the RV sites with tax, with the hot tax. Texas House Bill 5136, they're not currently collecting that unless it's connected with a cabin. And so that's how it's set up with the taxation. There's a chance that we're going to be looking at in September of this year, whether to tax RV sites and those type of things. So apologize for my throat going backwards. I call it old age. One of the things I like about coming back to Fredericksburg and being born and raised here, you get to meet guys like Charles Thompson and this guy over here on the right. His wife is a professional ice skater. And I got a granddaughter that is a professional ice skater. So I really like meeting people like that, like Jeff. And you're going to get to know Jeff here. And he's Mr. Artificial Intelligence here. But anyway.
In more ways than one.
We are starting our budget for this year with the county. It's going to start in June 26th. We're starting to run through that process. It's been exciting working with Daniel Jones and looking forward on a lot of these projects that we're working on. We've hired a new county engineer, so that department will be getting set up. She will be setting up all the subdivisions and bridges, and I'm so happy of that. Get that off my back, since I seem to have about 19 bridges in my precinct. But we are moving forward with Gellerman and the meeting with Garrett and TxDOT. They hope to start Gellerman Bridge construction, which is out there by Vogel Orchard, wait past beach season and start building that bridge. That bridge we've had fatalities on. Trying to move forward with Feaster Bridge out on the Kerrville Highway. Mowing and spraying, we're starting that up right now. Every Monday we just have, my crew has a lot of, let's fix a gate, fence post, cattle guards torn up, culverts, just from the impact of the tourism on the weekends. So, but we are starting with mowing and spraying. Paving's going to be starting here in a couple of weeks, and the county as a whole tries to do about 40 miles. Each precinct tries to get about 10 miles of paving done. The other new opportunities that I've had is the judge kicked me in the kneecap and said, hey, you got the library? So I'm working with the library.
I'm talking about my phone.
Help me find a librarian. But we've got a lot of opportunities there with the library and the changing all the way with the attitudes, with the books, with the kids, really where the library is going to go in the future. So we're looking at some focus groups and planning there that's coming up, and I've got 2 people working on that. The other thing that I found out with the library that was a big surprise to me, and I want to thank the police chief for helping me with this homeless. We got a problem, Houston. There, up until yesterday, there was 5 homeless, 1 male, 4 female, and we've been visiting them with the sheriff's help. We get up at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, go knock on their door, and we're pressing on them. Well, it came to my attention yesterday, we have 2 more. So just be aware that things are changing with this growth, and that we need to keep our community strong. We don't need to have an Austin or San Francisco setting with the whole homeless here. So anyway, I'm here. I'm going to pass it on to Mr. AI, and I had to figure out some way.
Again, a lot of great stuff going on with the county. A lot of change over there. I can tell you that our communication is more frequent and better than ever with the county. We're meeting with the county judge every couple of weeks. We have a council member attending every meeting. They've made a lot of positive changes. We're starting to talk about a lot of our shared budgets and really how that's going to impact each one of us at the very beginning of the budget this year. So looking forward to a lot more of that, Dennis. Thank you for being here.
Hi, my name is Jeff Williams. My wife and I live in the county, and we moved here from Austin 24 years ago, and there's a lot of things that the city of Fredericksburg does to stay ahead of potential problems. It's a very well-planned community. They're very forward-thinking, and I would encourage that continue. Because one of the lessons that I learned in my years in Austin is they always had the attitude, if we don't do something, nobody will be in demand of those services. and that never happens. People came anyway, they got behind on the roadways and the developments and everything else, and they've been playing catch-up ever since. So the city here does a really good job of looking forward and planning that. And touching on the landfill issue, we've recently formed a nonprofit to address all the glass waste that's produced by the wineries in the county. And I don't know if anybody knows, but between Blanco and Gillespie County, there are over 150 issued winery, distillery, and brewery permits, and they generate a lot of waste from cardboard to cork to glass, and we're trying to put together a program to address that. And best estimate so far is if we get this thing running the way we hope to, we could divert up to 100 tons of glass a year from the landfill. And I'm not sure how much cardboard, but a lot of that would be taken care of too. Right now, every winery and every brewery and every distillery in the county, they just throw it in the landfill because there's nothing else to do with it. And there's a solution for that. And there's a way to use that glass in a beneficial manner, particularly around roadway paving and there's other things. But anyway, that's what we're looking at trying to do. And the county, Dennis has been a big help in focusing us on some things, and hopefully the city will be a partner in this as well.
Thank you for that. Yes, sir.
My name's Bert Luna, and I live in the county and recently moved here mainly because of the small city and the way they operate as I'm learning more about the city.
All right.
My name's Kate Walker, and my husband and I moved here from Indiana just last August, so we're brand new residents of the city and glad to be here. What I love most is the same thing, the people here are what make the community, and we've just been accepted and sort of assimilated into just about everything that's going on, so that's going very well. And I mentioned before in this venue about recycling, so I'm glad to hear that there's real progress being made about that. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Bud Harris. My wife and I have lived here about 12 years. We live in the city. Why are we grateful to be here? Well, I think if you got about another 20 minutes or so. One is the city leadership and the county leadership and the way you think about this city and you think about growth, and that's really important. I think the other thing is the medical facilities here have just been incredible. I think the sense of the community, though, that's the major thing. People, the way they work with each other, the way they communicate, it's a blessing to be in this area. And we thank you for all the good things you're doing.
Thank you, Bud.
My name's Mike Hogan. I'm with Fredericksburg Computer Repair. I live in the county. Just here to listen and learn more about my city and county.
I should have sat in the back. I'm Leanne Bailey, wife of Clinton Bailey. Excuse me. And you wouldn't believe how many calls and texts I get over the week of people asking me questions about different things. And I learn more from coming to this meeting than I do actually sit on the porch talking to you at night, because at night you don't want to know what are the watering restrictions this week or whatever. So I appreciate the input from everybody because it helps me. I'm a local realtor, and it's important for me to know what's going on so that I can help my buyers and sellers. We talked last night, maybe a quick update on the market. The first quarter was terrible. I mean, we didn't have a lot of sales in January and February. March picked up. April has significantly picked up, and I hope that June will continue to do the same. Prices are coming down a little bit, and that doesn't hurt my feelings because I think we need to. We got really high really quickly, and I think that needs to come down so we can give some of these younger people a chance to own a home. There's about 45 short-term rentals on the market right now. The last time I looked, don't quote me on that number, but I think the market is taking care of itself as far as selling some short-term rentals. And I do want to say, when you sell a short-term rental, it's a little bit different than selling an affordable house because you've got bookings, you've got furniture and linens and all those things. So sometimes think about whenever it's affordable, what do we do with the bookings that are in place a year from now? So those are a reason why some of those short-term rentals take so long to convert back to residential, so.
Well, thank you for that. And prices are starting to drop just a little bit, but we talk about that every year, talk about valuations. I meant to mention that early on during the budget process last year. I'm a, cups half empty kind of person, not as optimistic, so I thought we'd see a pretty drastic decrease in valuations this next year. It was a surprise to me, 23% on the residential side. So when we're talking about sales tax, or excuse me, property tax projections, I thought we'd be down. It looks like we're going to be up. Yes, sir.
John McManus, I live in the city. On the recent elections, I worked a couple of days in early voting for the county, and then on election day I went and voted for the city. I was surprised to see that the city is so far behind the county in terms of voting technology. Is there any plans to upgrade?
Might have our city secretary answer that question.
So the city is, what do you mean by behind times of technology? The city, I have a lot of residents who are extremely happy that we hand count. So the city, those machines that you're talking about that scanning cost anywhere from $25,000 to $40,000 per machine. So if the city were to do that, we would have to have 4 machines. We do meet the state's requirement with having the ADA machine equipment, but other than that, I have a lot of residents who are very happy, and I do get a lot of support that we still do hand count.
We don't get a lot of complaints about the elections.
I'm Brenda Cole. I live in the city, and my concern right now is on enforcement in several areas. One is in the water restrictions. I still see we have so many absent owners of short-term rentals, and I know they're supposed to have a management company or some kind of a local manager, but you see, I walk a lot, I see houses after house that are still watering in the morning, and it may be on the right day, but they're not at the right time. And you call and report it, and there doesn't seem to be any action. And the other is just enforcement of our short-term rental rules and fines. I know they've changed that from the municipal court to another way of enforcing the fines, but that's one way of getting control of our short-term rentals, is to make them be good actors in the neighborhoods that they operate in.
Chief 4-Hour, do you want to address the code enforcement question? And again, for the first month of the stage 4 watering restrictions, we did help people make those adjustments. We understand that there are quite a few likely, that may still be watering in the morning or on the wrong day. We're actively addressing those issues. We can see that information through our smart meter technology, and again, trying to help people comply. But we are enforcing the code. The first violation's $25, second $250, the third $750. So I think that is going to generally get people's attention when we do issue a violation. So Chief, do you want to speak to that?
Sure. We're currently transitioning code enforcement under the police department. We've been under the police department for several weeks. We are transitioning all their policies and procedures, all our computer software, a lot of programs. But code enforcement is still out there every day enforcing. We have 2 code enforcement officers right now for all code violations for the city of Fredericksburg. So we encourage everyone, if you're walking in the morning and you see watering, if you're not getting a response by phone call, please call us or email me or Lieutenant Braxton Raymer. It doesn't matter who you email, myself, any one of the 3 lieutenants. We will get that information down to code enforcement and then target those areas in town that are still watering in the morning, and we'll educate them. We'll educate their landscaper, their water irrigation company, whoever they're with, to get them into compliance. There's still an education process for a lot of residents and non-residents or unoccupied homes, and we will educate them and then come back around and check on them, and if they need enforcement, we will issue a citation for that watering violation if they don't comply. There was some other trucks, trailers, expired registration, junk vehicles that came up to my attention before the meeting, and I got that address, and again, we will make our rounds around town and try to address all of those trucks, trailers, RVs, campers that have expired registration or no license plates, or just seem to be inoperable, and start cleaning up some of that stuff as well.
One of the positives with moving code enforcement under PD, their processes are a lot better defined in terms of getting a violation all the way through the administrative adjudication or municipal court process. Also, we essentially, once we're fully implemented, we'll have every police officer equipped with the ability to enforce our code, just like the 2 code enforcement officers that we have currently. So that includes watering restrictions, those violations that may be happening late at night, odd hours of the weekend, and so forth. So we're expecting that to be a lot more efficient and effective in the future. Yes, sir.
Okay, I'm George Studer. I live over by Cross Mountain with my wife, Mary. And one of our favorite things about Fredericksburg is of course, the people, but it's a safe place. We walk our neighborhoods, nighttime, morning, whatever, and we don't worry at all. And except maybe a flashlight to watch out for snakes or something. But and so I do also like the way we're increasing in the amount of transparency in the city activities. Daniel Jones went over to the county, and I can see he's increasing the transparency there. But I do want to encourage people to go. This is a community that includes a school and a hospital, or school system, district, and hospital. I was the only one over there. My wife and I were the only one over there for the installation of the new school board members that we voted on, you know. And myself and another person were the only 2 community people at the school board meeting this last week, where they announced new salaries for the teachers, new base pay, all that. And I want to encourage people to go to the school board meetings and update meetings that they have, and as well as put some pressure on the hospital, the new hospital. It was a big issue not very long ago, big part of our community, and we need to get updates from them, because it's going to affect everything we just talked about today, the growth, the ability to handle new people. Last thing is, I'd like to see more discussion about what the Texas legislature has come up with, how it might affect us, some topic on that, either at the council meeting or some other session. And finally, I think one of the solutions that we should look at for neighborhoods is destination points within the city that both are attractive to the residents as well as the visitors. And that would be, like in my case, Cross Mountain Park could be good for both. That's it.
Thank you, George.
My name is Bill Vernon. I live in the city, and I'd like to ask what the effect of the recent rains have had upon our water supply. And secondly, I'd like to pass a compliment on to the employees at the Recycle Center. They do an excellent job, and they're always very polite and courteous.
Yeah, so we have 2 monitoring wells. They're actually owned by the Texas Water Development Board in 2 different locations of the Ellenberger Aquifer. We do monitor those. You can pull it up. It's a web-based link, so anybody can pull it up, just like I pull it up almost, not daily, but at least 2 or 3 times a week. We have seen some rebound in the aquifer with the blessed rains that we have received. Some of that's not only due to the rains, but it's due to our pumpage rates being lower. So through the month of May, our pumpage rates were a little bit more than 500,000 gallons less per day when we compared that to last year at this time. Now last year, if you recall, May was very warm, and we were reaching that 3.8 to close to 4 million gallons a day. If you look at what we were doing this May, we were about that 3 million gallons per day, and just under that. So the numbers were really good for this time of year. Really, and we thank all of the customers for doing that from a water conservation standpoint. In the Ellenberger Aquifer, at the Canals well field, we saw about a 13-foot increase in that area, basically bringing us up to about the same levels we were at this time last year. So there was that much catch-up that we had to do. In the old San Antonio Road Aquifer, we basically, same thing, leveled out to where we were last year, saw about a 2-foot increase in that area of the aquifer. So we have seen some increases for sure. I would just say that with the weather forecast later this week, it does look pretty warm again, unfortunately, and that high pressure is building in, according to the forecasters. Hopefully that moves out of here. El Nino is back, thank goodness. We hope to continue getting some of those rains so that aquifer does continue to increase. Because again, our aquifer levels are essentially where we were at this time last year. So we see a real hot, dry summer. They can come down if our pumpage rates do go up.
Anybody thinks he sounds like a weatherman? He's the city hall weatherman, and that's what we call him. So if you ever want a weather forecast, you can call Chris Monday morning. He can give you the whole week's worth, and he's usually pretty close. So
I'm Alan Williamson. I live in the city. No problems.
thank you, sir.
Yeah, Tom Light here. And I live in the city as well. And we came out of the Houston area about 7 years ago. So what do I like about small town living? Everything. So we're very, very happy here. I would like to ask the question about who would I speak to about getting some drainage ditch maintenance. I have a drainage ditch behind my house that basically is like a dry creek, if you will, except that I have one pool of water that stays wet all the time. I don't know if that's a city or a county.
We have a vegetation management department that does manage all of our drainage ways in town. Are you in Stone Ridge, perhaps?
The Carriage Hills.
Carriage Hills.
Yeah, just south of Stone Ridge.
Some of that
drainage comes from Stone Ridge.
Right. Some of that may be privately maintained. Some of it may be public land that is maintained by the city. We can definitely take a look at that and address the issue for you. I see Chris making a note. If we could get your address after the meeting, we can check into that. Yes, sir.
Hello, I'm Dana Rowan, live in the city. And about Fredericksburg, historically for our founders, it was the land, the water, and the climate that brought them here, and the opportunity. I think of why I'm here as kind of a pyramid, because we're kind of building upon those who came before us. And so they built this community, and the community has changed. And I love this community. We've been here about 5 years with my wife, Cheryl. So I think people in the community, but it's all built on what was developed first. So I want to thank the city for all the planning you're doing. It looks like you're thinking through things in a logical way. So I appreciate that.
Thank you for that.
My name's Carol Hammerson. I live in the city. Eric grew up in Texas, and my in-laws moved here in '74. So what made us want to come back is the people and the civility with which they treat each other, and the fact that there is such courtesy and such genuine kindness that you see here on a day-to-day basis. It doesn't get much better than that anywhere I've lived. I will make one comment about these city elections, which were, I think, wonderful. Eric and I worked on 3 different days at the city elections, and I don't believe that even one person said to me, I want more technology. There were many, many people who did say, I like the fact that it's done by hand. And there's great accountability, and time after time, people expressed how secure they feel. So that's just 3 days worth of information, and I understand that your experience may be totally different. I do think that's one of those kind of intensely personal things that people still value, and maybe that needs to be kept in the thoughts of any change that might happen.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Gwen?
Hi, I'm Gwen Fulbrook, and I live in the city. And first of all, I want to thank everyone who came out for the 75th anniversary of the airport. It was just a wonderful day, and we've just got a lot to be proud of out there, and we'll be having more events. We try to do a lot of things to get the kids out. So we've got, next weekend we have Young Eagles flights, which are free flights for kids. We have 80 kids signed up. So it's a lot of stuff going on out there. And I moved here in 1995, and this is just the most wonderful place in the United States, but in Texas to live. So I appreciate everybody, and you guys are wonderful. Thanks.
Lindy Siegel, Austin refugee, been out here about 16 years. I will echo everything my former expatriate colleagues said. The attitude was, if you don't build it, they won't come. Believe me, that does not work. So thank you all for your planning efforts. What do I like? I like the spirit of volunteerism. I don't use the R word, I'm a professional volunteer and mentor. We have that, we need more of it. There also is a spirit of can-do. I like the talent that's out here. We can't depend on government to solve every problem for us. What I'd like to see more of is voter participation. I work those polls too, and I do like hand-counted voting ballots. We've got to turn more people out to make the decisions that are going to long outlive us. Garrett, broken record, Tivydale speed. They're about to dump heavy machinery trailers onto Tivydale right next to Ingram Ready Mix. The speed limit is too high. There's too much development going on there for a 55-mile-an-hour speed limit all the way up to 16. I drive it every day. Gwen already talked about there's a lot of good things happening out at our airport. And please come out if you're interested in aviation at all. We've got our chapter meeting this Saturday, 8 o'clock pancakes, and an exciting program with the director of the Tailwheel Academy. These guys are going to talk about bush planes and expeditions and learning how to fly a tailwheel dragger. Following weekend, again, we have 80 kids signed up for their first free flight. So come on out.
Any pilots in the room? Anybody interested in becoming a pilot? We have an airplane viewing area over here by the fence in the park, donated to the city of Fredericksburg. We have a radio, communication radio on frequency going all the time. If you're interested in listening to the traffic and watching airplanes, go over there and check it out. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, Cheryl McBride. I live in the city and approaching almost 5 years here, and just moved here for the quality of life. I'm an Austin expat too, and I've been part of large state agencies, and it's really impressive to see how the city is run. So kudos to you guys.
Thank you.
Hi, my name's Mitch Leland. I've lived here for 23 years. I love the place. I came here because of the aviation, and it's been a good part of my life. But recently, it turns out that I might have the police gun range next door to my house, and it seems to be a misplaced use, considering the neighbors, the residents, the business within the area. And considering that there's a covenant that prohibits the use of that for any other use than water storage, I'm concerned about it. So it seems like a blunt force move by the city. We were never invited to participate in discussions, and when the lady over here talks about the civility, it was lacking in this particular case. So I just hate to see something like this go down. It's going to be hard on the property values, the quality of life that we expected when we moved there. So I hope it has a good finalization to benefit everybody. And certainly we support the police, but it doesn't seem like a good fit.
Yes, sir, and that is a site that we're currently evaluating for that use. The police, county sheriff's department, DPS gun range is currently located off of Metzger Road, within half a mile of my house, maybe a little bit closer. It's been there for how many years, Chief? 20 years, at least by the county. So that property is currently for sale. We had all of our training equipment out there on site that we have removed. So again, we're evaluating sites. If there's a private location that we can utilize. Training is intermittent. If that site is developed for that, we will visit with all of the neighboring properties. We're aware of the covenants. Thank you for providing those to us. We're looking at those right now. We don't want to do anything that's going to be disruptive to anyone. So again, we're just starting that conversation. Thanks for being here. For those listening in, that is something that we, again, will sit down and continue to discuss with all the neighbors out surrounding that area.
It just seemed like we found out after the fact that the dump trucks were moving in to bring dirt in for the berming, and when I asked my neighbor, Fred Mooney, who's also a fellow pilot, and pilots tell tall stories, and he says, guess what? There's going to be a gun range next door. I said, come on, Fred. Anyway, so it's bothersome, so I hope it has a good resolution to it.
Yes, sir. Thanks for being here.
That was a private gun range for years. We're talking about 40 years.
Off Metzger Road?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tribes Hill, right?
Yes, sir.
John Heaver, I'm a city resident, lived in the area about 20 years, grew up in Dallas, and there's a big difference between Dallas, Austin, Houston, and God's country. So we're all very, very lucky to live here. I've been to a couple of these meetings, I enjoyed it, so I thought I'd come back, and the coffee's good.
Hi, Alan Johnson from Heritage Hill Country in the city. We moved here about 11 years ago, moved from Minnesota, and we really, really enjoy it. We knew we were moving here 9 years before we moved, and it was the people, and as you say, the civility and how people treat each other, and it felt like a throwback to the upper Midwest that we grew up in. I do have a question for Chris. At Heritage Hill Country right now, we have very low water flow. We have pressure, static pressure that seems to be adequate when you gauge it, but flush a toilet and the other faucets in the house just become a dribble, and for some people they're not even getting any water out of other faucets when they flush a toilet. We have washing machines that are showing errors when they hit the cycle portion of the cycle where it needs to fill. We're presuming it's the result of the new water mains along East Main up there, and that there's been some disconnection or something, but at any rate, there's no volume, and if you know what that is, could give us some indication as to when it might be restored, or would you look into it?
Yeah, certainly. Sorry, first I've heard of this. We'll definitely look at it. You know, we installed the pressure reducing valves. That's the first thing that we'll look at. If you have pressure though, it should not result in a low flow, but we will take a look at that today. As far as the construction on East Main, currently they are installing pipe, but none of the new pipe has been put into service yet. So they'll be pressure testing that. They have to do bacterial samples, and get those approved, make the connections, and then tie that in. So that particular project is not a result at this time. But I would say it's either something, and I guess it's a global issue all around Heritage Hill Country. It's not just a couple of certain areas. Okay. We'll look at the pressure reducing valves. Again, that shouldn't cause a low flow issue, but we'll definitely look at that. That's the first thing that I would say could be causing an issue.
Thank you.
Sir?
Good morning, Bill Wagaman. Also live in Heritage Hill Country, and I operate a Uber transportation company. Been doing that for about 5 years. Right now, I think we're probably up around 13,000 rides that we've given. And when we get passengers in the car, one of the big questions we hear is, it's voiced several ways, but it is, what's so great about Fredericksburg? And my answer to them is always, well, the best thing about Fredericksburg is the people. There's people that care, they care about each other, they care about their community, and they get involved in their community. It's a safe community, it's a clean community. There's not a bad neighborhood here. And we have a city government, excuse the comment, but this is a no BS city government to get things done. And it really improves the quality of life here compared to a lot of cities, townships, and places that I've lived in the country.
Thank you for those comments. Charles?
Hi, I'm Charles Thompson, and I'm just proud to be here.
Okay, Brady, so I want you to wow us with some kind of visitor stats. What's so great about... What is so great about Fredericksburg? What are the top 5 destinations that people routinely visit in Fredericksburg? Why do people come here?
People come here for multiple reasons. As everybody in the audience knows, and those watching online, obviously, Fredericksburg is known for many things. The winery is only one element, right, of what makes, obviously, Fredericksburg and Gillespie County special. We are the culinary capital of the Hill Country. Obviously, our restaurants far exceed what we would have as a community of 10,500, right, within our geopolitical boundary if we didn't have that visitation of folks that are coming. We know from looking at research, no surprise, the outdoors is a huge draw to Gillespie County. Enchanted Rock gets well over 300,000 visitors a year. 91% of those are non-residents within 78624 when we're looking at that new data. And then as we continue to do research, we also know that roughly 88% of all sales tax that is spent within the geopolitical boundary of Fredericksburg is paid for non-residents on an annual basis. And again, that shows obviously, because all of that flows into the city's general fund from an operating cost perspective. So that shows the need and the benefit obviously of what we have and what we actually get from sharing our beloved communities of Fredericksburg and Gillespie County with the rest of obviously Texas and the world for that matter. I do just want to say thank you by a show of hands. Anyone in the room take the resident sentiment study that was recently released? That is fantastic. We were in market or fielded our study over a 2-week period, and we had 1,343 responses, which is absolutely fantastic. Our partner right now, Longwoods International, is rolling up that data and going to provide that within the next week or two. We will then be able to take that information, obviously share that with the city, our elected officials, our county, and take a look at where we go from that. If you did not have an opportunity to take this round, fear not. We will be doing another resident sentiment study, most likely, probably every 2 years moving forward again, so we can gauge the priorities and make sure we're moving the needle in a positive way, right? To, again, what we know from a Convention and Visitor Bureau is a great place to visit must first be a great place to live.
Perfect. Thank you, Brady. Thanks for being here.
I'm Sharon Joseph. I'm a third-generation Fredericksburg resident, and proudly so. I love everything about it. My greatest concern right now, and should be the greatest concern of everybody in this room, is health care. Our wonderful hospital, our 5-star rated, not-for-profit community hospital has been sold to a 3-star rated, publicly traded corporation, and we have no idea how much they got for it, but we know, we've heard numbers like 100 million to 150 million. That's a chunk of money coming into this community. So the same people that made the decision to sell this hospital are the people that are going to manage this money when it comes in. City Council and County Commissioners came together and bravely sent a resolution to this group of people and said, we would like to appoint people to this board to handle this unknown $100 million. We would like some appointed by the city, some appointed by the county, and some appointed by the school district. The people that you as a community have elected should appoint people to handle this money. The answer from Create Healthy was, thank you, but no thank you. We will take care of this ourselves. I think we need public outcry to say, this is unacceptable. We want to know what you got for the hospital. They're saying that it's a confidential thing. Well, it was a community-owned, it was a community-owned hospital, and it was sold to a publicly traded corporation. How can the sale that's over be confidential is my question. But the main thing is that we need people that were elected by the city and the county and the school district to appoint people to handle this money. Now, the only way I know to do it is if you Google Create Healthy, you will find a post office box and a telephone. We have to let these people know that we want community involvement. They're appointing people to this board that don't even live in this community. I think it's a huge crisis. If healthcare is important to you, I think you need to Google Create Healthy and reach out to them and say, let the city, the county, and the school district appoint the people to this board. Thank you.
Dr. Hammers.
Eric Hammerson, live in the city. Second everything that Sharon said. I think it's very important. Earlier I'd asked a question, and perhaps you've gotten an answer yet. When are we going to get signs that reflect the 2020 census as opposed to the 2010 census for the population as you come into town? I know we don't do them ourselves. I presume the state does that.
Right. We had that question at a town hall the other evening. Garrett, do you want to answer that?
So Commissioner Neffendorf mentioned the meeting with TxDOT earlier this week. So we talked about the speed studies. Of course, they're backed up. It's on their list, and as well as the signs. So there were some delays in the census counts this year, or in 2020. So I believe all those numbers have now been finalized. So the state is working on updating the city limit signs and the population numbers, but don't have any set dates. Hopefully soon.
Do you know what those numbers are, Garrett?
Anna, do you remember? 11,530 is the number coming into my head, but I'm not sure of that. Thank you. Is that
Anyone else? Paige, do you have anything?
Thank you.
Is it possible that when that number comes in, can you put it on the city website and say, Fredericksburg, the population of that?
Yes. Yep. So we'll confirm that number and we'll get that posted. Yes, sir.
All right. Well, again, thank you all for being here. Great turnout every time. If you have any after questions, we have about 5 minutes before we've got to get back to City Hall. Have a great rest of the week. Thank you.